She said, "We had nothing," and for a moment I just stared at her face, feeling a raw mix of rage and regret churn in my stomach. Part of me wanted to believe her, to cling to any scrap of dignity that could explain away the image burned into my phone screen. But the memory of that video glowed behind my eyes, demanding to be acknowledged. My mind flashed to those few seconds of footage, the soft lamplight, her silhouette moving on her knees, the telltale shape of a man's figure standing near our bed. The view was shaky, someone else must have been filming. But it was enough to show exactly what was happening in the bedroom I paid for, with the woman I'd married. I hadn't pressed play right away when I first got that notification. I'd come home from work, still in my jacket, phone in my hand, scanning through messages, updates from clients, a reminder from my mother about Dad's checkup, and then this alert about a new post, available by geolocation. Geolocation? It was unusual enough that I tapped it, thinking maybe my wife had tagged me in something. She's into that social media stuff, works in marketing. She's always testing new ways to push content. But I never expected to see her in that position, in our own home, with a man whose face I'd never seen before. At first, I thought it had to be old footage from someone's twisted idea of a prank. Maybe it was a performance piece or a bizarre misunderstanding. My brain tried to rationalize anything except the simplest explanation: she was cheating. The date stamp killed my illusions in an instant. It was fresh. That knowledge tasted bitter on my tongue, almost as bitter as the tea I'd brewed earlier, no sugar. I remember standing there in my kitchen, the kettle hissing, my phone screen bright in the fading daylight, replaying those horrifying seconds over and over. In that silent loop, I saw her slip aside the belt of that silky robe I bought her last month. She'd told me she never wore anything else to bed anymore. A warm memory had clung to that robe. She'd teased me about how it felt so soft against her skin. Now the only thing I could feel was a dark, hollow ache inside my chest, thinking about what else it touched, who else it touched. She said, "We had nothing," and I could almost laugh at how pathetic that lie was. This was the morning after I confronted her with the evidence. She'd managed to intercept me in the hallway before I could make it out the door. She still smelled like the same vanilla lotion she'd been applying for years. It used to comfort me. Now it made me want to step back and keep my distance. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she clutched my arm as if she were afraid I'd vanish into the floor. "Please," she kept whispering, "it was a moment of weakness, it didn't mean anything." I said nothing. I just watched the shape of her lips, watched how they trembled, how her breath caught. Once, that vulnerability would have undone me, made me cradle her head and promise we'd fix whatever was broken. Now it was simply noise in my ears. We had fought late into the night. Actually, she did most of the talking, sobbing, making excuses, trying to blame stress or miscommunication. She said she felt unseen in our marriage, that I was never around, that we grew apart, all those tired clichés that should have set me off. But I'd used up my anger in silence. Strange, how a man can be so loud without raising his voice. I think she sensed that. She kept waiting for me to yell, to throw something, to call her vile names. Instead, I just stood there, stony and quiet, letting her words crash against me like waves on a rock. My first real words came long after midnight. I'd finished packing an overnight bag, a few changes of clothes, my toothbrush, and some work files. Necessary or not, it felt symbolic. She hovered at the edge of the bedroom, arms folded tight across her chest, lower lip trembling. "Why aren't you saying anything?" she asked, sounding half hysterical. I turned, kept my tone measured, controlled. "If it was nothing," I said, "then I have nothing else to say." Maybe that was cruel, but it was all I had left. The look in her eyes told me my coldness hurt her more than if I'd screamed. She might have even preferred a slap in the face. Something about that knowledge gave me an ugly sense of satisfaction, which in turn made me despise myself. Part of me wanted to cave in, to break down and say, "We can fix this." But every time I closed my eyes, I saw that video again, my wife's parted lips, the arch of her back, the angle of her arms as she gripped his thighs. When she tried to block my path, her fingers twisting in the front of my shirt, I calmly unhooked her hands. "I'm going," I said. "Don't bother following me." That ended the conversation. I walked out, duffel in hand, leaving behind the place I thought would be my refuge forever. She stayed in the hallway, tears cutting down her cheeks, breathing in little panicked gulps. The door closed. I stood on the porch for a second, feeling the night air rush in, hearing the crickets. Somewhere in the pit of my stomach, I half expected her to run after me, to fling herself around my waist, to beg me on her knees like I'd seen her do in that video with him. But she didn't. I drove aimlessly for a while, ended up at a motel I'd never heard of, a place that smelled like stale cigarettes and bleach. The walls were thin, I could hear a man next door playing some talk show on full volume. Lying on that squeaky bed, I stared at the ceiling, replaying what had happened, how the day had begun, how it had ended. My chest felt bruised, as though someone had repeatedly punched me from the inside. It dawned on me that every memory I cherished, every trusting moment I'd built with her, now felt laced with poison. I didn't sleep much. Around 3 in the morning, I thought of the gun in my safe. My father taught me how to handle firearms responsibly, and I'd kept a Glock for home defense. The memory of that moment, opening the safe the previous evening, sliding my palm over the cold metal, her terrified face behind me, was seared into my mind. I saw the flicker of triumph in her eyes when she thought I might lose control. She wanted me to lash out, to throw a punch, to do something so irreparable that she could claim I was the monster. Instead, I set the Glock aside, stuffed it back in the drawer, ignoring her wide-eyed confusion. I could feel her tension, the way her pulse hammered at the base of her throat. And in a voice too calm to be normal, I'd said, "Enough. It's time for me to be me. Without you." That was the last phrase I managed before I left. At daybreak, I took a shower, dressed in the same clothes from the night before, wrinkled slacks, a rumpled button-down, and headed out. I had nowhere specific to go, but I wasn't ready to face her again. So I drove toward the old diner near my office, a place that opened early for the working crowd. I parked, took a seat at the counter, and ordered coffee. The waitress gave me a sympathetic look that made me wonder what kind of expression I was wearing. Probably the face of a man who got kicked in the teeth by life. The coffee was bitter, too strong, but at least it shook me awake. I stared at my phone, at that cursed video, until my vision blurred. I considered deleting it, but some twisted corner of my mind refused. I needed it. I needed the proof that this was real, that my quiet rage was justified, that I wasn't just overreacting to an imaginary betrayal. Then my phone buzzed with another notification, a direct message from the same social platform. I opened it to find more pictures. Screenshots. And not just from that video. There were other angles, other nights, maybe. She was wearing the same robe in some, in others wearing nothing but a smile. The man's face was mostly hidden or turned away, but I caught enough glimpses. He was younger. Tall, probably stronger than me in a lean, showy way. He had tattoos. My mind burned with the comparisons. Was he better in bed? Did she moan for him? Did he make her feel things I never did? These questions circled relentlessly, echoing in that diner's fluorescent glow, as the waitress topped off my coffee with a pitying glance. I swallowed the last bitter drop and told myself, enough. Obsessing over the details wouldn't change the facts. The rage inside me needed a plan, needed a way out. So I decided to see her again, face to face, at the house we once called home. No matter what she said or did, I was going to keep my composure. Because I knew if I lost it, there would be no going back. I parked in our driveway a little before noon, noticing that her car was still there. My chest tightened. I had half expected her to run to a friend's place, maybe that same so-called friend who'd posted the video with that smug caption, "When the hubby's away." Instead, she was in the living room, perched on the edge of the couch, arms wrapped around her knees. She looked up when I walked in, eyes swollen with tears, hair a mess. "You came back," she whispered, as though afraid to speak too loudly. I stood in the doorway, taking in the details of the room. Family photos on the mantel, the drapes she'd insisted on picking out, the faint smell of her favorite scented candle. All these tiny anchors of our shared life, now tarnished by that one act. "I need my laptop," I said finally. My voice sounded hollow, even to my own ears. I walked past her, ignoring the trembling in her hands when she reached out toward me. I could sense her breath hitching. "Ed," she said softly, can we just talk?" I didn't stop rummaging through the drawers for the charger, cables, anything to keep my hands busy. "Talk about what? How you felt lonely? How you found someone else to fix that?" She flinched. We got close because of work." I spun around to face her. "That's what you call it, close? Then why the video? Why the pictures? Why do it in our bedroom?" She swallowed hard. "I didn't know about the video. He told me he wanted a memory. I was stupid. I was so stupid, Ed." My knuckles turned white around the edge of the desk. "You sure you want me to believe you were just an innocent victim of circumstance?" She started to say something, then stopped. Her eyes glistened, and I saw real fear in them. Fear of losing me. Fear of my rage. I couldn't tell. She inhaled sharply. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm truly sorry." I pocketed my charger, forced myself not to lash out. "Sure," I said with deliberate calm, "I accept your apology." The words came out coated in venom. I wanted to see if she'd notice how hollow they were. Her face twisted, tears threatening again, so I left before she could read too deeply into my expression. I made it as far as the hallway when she followed, stepping around me to block the front door. "Where are you staying?" she asked, voice shaky. "That's none of your concern. Please, can you at least tell me you're safe?" I gave a short, bitter laugh. "You're worried about my safety now?" She bit her lip, eyes shining with tears. It was manipulative, whether she intended it or not. The memory of her tearful confession from the night before flickered in my mind, how she'd insisted she felt invisible, that she never meant to fall into someone else's arms. It sounded like cheap justification. I stepped around her, opened the door, and felt the afternoon sunlight hit my face like a slap. As I descended the porch steps, a swirl of images tore through me, her body arched under that man's hands, the look of satisfaction on his face, the knowledge that he was in my space, my bed. I gritted my teeth so hard my jaw ached. She said it was just loneliness, a moment of weakness, but that didn't erase the betrayal. 2 days passed with little contact. I busied myself at the bank, meeting clients, helping them with their finances. I put on a crisp shirt every morning, shaved carefully, tried to project the image of a stable, calm professional. But underneath that veneer, my mind was gnawing on the same bone, how to make sense of this, how to punish them both. I started receiving messages from an unknown number. At first, I ignored them. Then curiosity got the better of me. One read, "Hey, man, let's talk." Another, "Don't blame her. It was my fault." That second one made me freeze. The text was from him, Daniel, the lover. I recognized the area code from around here. So that was it, he must have gotten my number from some records, or maybe from her phone. My chest tightened with a wild surge of anger. He had the nerve to contact me. The phone vibrated again. "I'm sorry if you saw anything that upset you. Let me explain." A hot flush crawled up my neck. Let him explain. I imagined him stepping into my living room, making himself at home, explaining to me like I was the outsider in my own life. The mental image was enough to make me laugh out loud, a sound that startled the coworker in the next cubicle. I mumbled an apology, sank deeper into my seat, and pressed delete. That evening, I sat in my motel room, nursing a bottle of cheap whiskey, phone in my hand, an ocean of regrets swirling in my thoughts. The overhead light buzzed. I kept recalling the look on Alice's face when I said I accepted her apology in that venomous tone. Had I enjoyed seeing her flinch? A savage part of me answered yes. I needed fresh air. I threw on my jacket, stepped outside into the cool night. The wind carried the faint odor of car exhaust from the nearby highway. Under a flickering street lamp, I looked at my phone again. Another text from him, this time a voicemail. Without letting myself think, I hit play. His voice was deeper than I expected. Hey, Ed. I got your number from Alice's phone. Listen, man, I never meant to disrespect you like this. It just happened. She said she was unhappy, and I guess I fell for her. I'm sorry. Call me back if you want. I get it if you don't. Take care. I listened twice, searching for any hint of remorse, any sign of sincerity. All I heard was a man covering his ass, trying to tidy up a mess he created. The same old story, the same worthless apology. I pressed delete, shoved the phone in my pocket, and stared up at the sky. In that moment, I wanted to unleash something savage upon him. I wanted him to experience the same cold pit in his stomach, the same gnawing emptiness that I felt. But how? Smashing his face might be satisfying in some primal way, but I knew that was exactly the reaction that could land me in jail. No, I needed something more deliberate, more calculated. A quiet, deadly sort of retribution. Something that would make him realize just how deeply he'd meddled in a life he had no right to enter. I thought about approaching Alice with a plan, some twisted game where I'd pretend to forgive her, lure him in, then humiliate them both. But the idea made me feel sick. I wanted to maintain whatever dignity I had left. If that meant silence, so be it. The next day at work, I found it nearly impossible to focus. My boss asked if everything was okay. I lied, said I was just tired. After lunch, a small envelope arrived in the mail, no return address. Inside was a photo of my wife in that damn robe, parted at the chest, revealing more skin than I wanted to see, her face turned slightly away, lips parted in a sultry invitation. There was a scribbled note, I'm sure you got the rest. No signature. I tore the photo in two, then paused, considering whether to shred it completely. Instead, I stuffed it in my desk drawer. I didn't know why. Maybe I needed the physical reminder of what was at stake, of the humiliation that crept through my veins every time I saw her. Late that afternoon, my phone rang. It was her. I hesitated, then picked up. What? I said, letting the coldness color my voice. She sniffled, as if she'd been crying. I need you to come home tonight. I frowned. Home. That place isn't my home right now. A pause, a shaky breath. I understand, but, please, can you at least talk to me in person? I don't want to keep calling you like this. Something in me stirred. Maybe I was just tired of avoiding it all. Fine, I said. I'll be there after work. When I pulled into the driveway, her car was the only one there. I scanned the windows, half expecting that lover to be inside, but everything looked quiet. I got out and glanced around, noticing how the lawn had grown a little too long, how the mailbox was stuffed with flyers. It felt like stepping into a house in slow decay, neglected by the people who used to care. She opened the door before I knocked. She wore a simple sweater and jeans, her hair tied back. Her face bore the ravages of nights spent in turmoil, dark circles under her eyes, lines of tension across her forehead. I followed her into the living room, noticing how she wrung her hands, as if trying to keep them occupied. I didn't invite him here, she said quickly, reading my unspoken suspicion. He doesn't come around anymore. I didn't respond. Instead, I sank into the armchair across from the couch where she perched. She cleared her throat. I've been doing a lot of thinking. About us. Is that so? She nodded. I know you don't trust me. I know I screwed everything up. But I'm still your wife, Ed. I want to try to repair this. A short, harsh laugh escaped me. Repair it? Like it's a leaky faucet? She flinched, tears gathering in her eyes. I know it's not that simple. But I wanted to say, I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. Therapy, counseling, a separation if you need it. But just, don't vanish completely. She was searching my face, looking for some sign of hope. The part of me that once loved her almost responded with compassion. But then I remembered the pictures, the betrayal in our bed. Why? I asked. Why would you want me back? Her lips trembled. Because I realized too late how much you meant to me. I let myself get caught in an illusion of excitement. I thought, maybe I wasn't living enough. That's not an excuse. But I didn't see how it would destroy us. I stared at her, letting the silence speak for me. She began to cry softly, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. After a moment, she reached over to the coffee table and held up a piece of paper, divorce forms. If you can't stand the sight of me anymore, I understand. I signed my parts. Just in case. That single gesture shook me more than I expected. I felt a wave of conflicting emotions, the urge to tear those papers to shreds, the urge to sign them immediately, the urge to gather her in my arms and forget everything. But I only said, I see. She exhaled shakily. Say something. Anything. I glanced at the forms, then met her eyes. You said we had nothing, right? That's what this was, nothing. She nodded miserably. Then keep them, I said, pushing the papers back towards her. For now. Before she could interpret that, I rose and walked down the hall. The door to the bedroom was open, and I saw the unmade bed. My stomach twisted at the sight. Memories tore at me, the last time we made love there, the laughter we once shared. I was on the verge of shutting that door when I noticed an object on the dresser, her phone. I walked over, lifted it, and heard her hurried footsteps behind me. What are you doing? She asked, voice tinged with alarm. Nothing, I said, but I was already unlocking it with the passcode I knew by heart, that birth date of hers. She didn't protest, just watched me with dread in her eyes. I scrolled through her messages, ignoring how her knuckles pressed against her lips. Sure enough, there were texts from him, pictures, half-finished plans to meet up. Some were from weeks ago, others from months. She'd lied about it being just a recent mistake. Long time, I muttered, tossing the phone onto the bed. When exactly did you plan to tell me? She let out a choking sob, covering her face. I turned away. I'd seen enough. Maybe I expected to feel triumphant in that moment, but all I felt was a deeper chasm of despair opening beneath my feet. I left her standing there, shaking with tears, and strode out of the house. My car door slammed shut with a sense of finality that echoed in my head. Another few days passed. I occupied myself with work, with trips to the gym, with long drives that led nowhere. The tension in my chest never really dissipated. Late one evening, I found myself in the old parking lot behind the gym, leaning against my car, glaring at the phone in my hand. That single voicemail from him lingered in my memory. I half wondered if he'd call again. Part of me wanted him to, so I'd have an excuse to spew all the rage building inside me. As if summoned by that thought, the phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered in a clipped tone, yes. Silence. Then a breath. Then, hey, Ed, it's me. Daniel, I said flatly. He hesitated. I want to say this in person. I feel sick about what happened. My hand clenched. Why on earth would I meet you? Because I respect you enough to want to say it to your face, he replied. If you never want to speak to me again, fine, but at least let me be man enough to meet you and apologize. I swallowed a lump in my throat. Fine. At the coffee shop near the corner of Hill and Main. Tomorrow at 6. I'll give you 10 minutes. The next evening, I arrived a bit early, uncertain whether this was a trap or a farce. The coffee shop was dimly lit, with local artwork on the walls. Soft music drifted from a hidden speaker. I found a small booth in the back. At exactly 6, he walked in. Even from a distance, I recognized the confident set of his shoulders, the stylish haircut, the casual clothes that somehow looked high-end. He spotted me, approached with hesitant steps. Up close, I noticed a faint tattoo line peeking from under his collar, a swirl of black ink. His eyes flickered with uncertainty, his lips pressed together. Ed, he said quietly, slipping into the seat across from me. I didn't speak, only stared at him. He took a breath. Look, I know there's nothing I can say that makes this right. But I need you to know that I never set out to hurt you. When I met Alice, she was unhappy. I tried to stay professional, but we clicked. One night, after a shoot, we kissed. It went further than it should have. I take full responsibility. I let his words hang in the air, studying him. I saw no obvious guilt etched on his face, no real remorse, just the typical, watery regret of a man who's been caught. Why record it? I asked abruptly. He winced. I was drunk. It was just something I did, thought it was erotic, I guess. I never meant for it to go online. I swear. Her friend, somebody, must have gotten hold of it. Posted it for laughs or attention. I don't know. A muscle in my jaw twitched. You had to do it in my house. My bedroom. He lowered his gaze. Yeah. That was a bad call. She said you were away for a business trip. Look, man, I'm truly sorry. I leaned forward, trying to keep my voice calm. You realize you've blown up my marriage, right? You took something from me that I can never get back. He nodded slowly. I know. If I could undo it, I would. For a moment, I imagined lunging across the table, smashing my fist into his perfect face. But instead, I forced my lips into a thin smile. Sure, I said, echoing the same hollow forgiveness I'd given Alice. I accept your apology. His eyes flicked up, uncertain how to interpret my tone. Is that, do you really? I smirked. Yeah. It's cool. A silence stretched between us, thick with tension. His shoulders seemed to relax slightly. Maybe one day, if you two patch things up. I cut him off with a raised hand. Thanks for the apology, I said, standing. We're done here. He watched me walk away, confusion evident in his face. Part of me felt a twisted satisfaction at leaving him hanging, unsure if he'd just been pardoned or threatened. Outside, the evening air felt fresh against my hot skin. I got into my car, gripped the steering wheel tight, and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were bloodshot, my mouth set in a grim line. I felt no relief. If anything, the ache in my chest had grown heavier. I realized I'd become addicted to my own anger, feeding on it to keep from collapsing. But I knew I couldn't live like that forever. That night, I returned to the house, uncertain if I'd catch Alice at home. The living room lights were on, and a lamp glowed in the bedroom window. I stepped inside. Silence greeted me. Then I heard her voice from the kitchen. Ed, she called hesitantly. I followed the sound, found her at the table with a mug of tea, the steam curling upward. She looked exhausted, eyes puffy, hair unkempt. I made tea, she said. If you want some. I swallowed, my gaze drifting to the kettle, a box of tea bags, the sugar bowl. Memories flooded me, how many mornings we'd shared a quiet cup together before work, how I'd always teased her about using too much sugar. Now the very sight of that sugar felt cloying and unnecessary. "No, thanks," I replied, stepping closer. "Why are you still here? Why not go stay with a friend?" She lifted her shoulder in a half-shrug. "This is my home too, Anne. I keep hoping you'll come back." I forced a tight smile. "You don't want me here?" Her eyes welled up. "But I do." I shook my head. "No. You want the version of me you threw away. Or maybe you just don't want to admit it's really over." She looked at the mug in her hands. "I understand if you can't forgive me. But please, just tell me if you plan to end this, really end it. I'd rather know than live in limbo." My throat felt thick. "I'm not sure what I plan to do yet. But I know I can't keep dancing around the truth." She blinked. "Which is?" I let the silence weigh on her, then said softly, "That I hate what you did. It's killing me every moment I remember it. And I'll never see you the same way again." A tear rolled down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. I exhaled, turned, and walked out to the back porch. The night air was crisp, the sky dotted with stars. I heard her footsteps behind me. She kept a few feet of distance, as though afraid I might push her away if she got too close. We stood there in silence, gazing at the dark yard. Eventually, she spoke. "Ed, if you need me to leave, I can pack some things. Go to my parents." I stared at the black silhouette of our fence, remembering how we once hosted a barbecue there with friends, how we laughed and teased each other. "I don't care," I said. She sucked in a breath. "All right," she whispered. Her voice broke, and she retreated inside. I stayed on the porch, arms crossed, until I heard the sound of a suitcase's zipper and the soft shuffle of feet near the front door. Then the door clicked shut, and the house fell silent. For the first time in days, I was truly alone in my own space. The quiet pressed in, making my pulse throb in my ears. I should have felt relief, but a strange hollowness spread through my chest instead. I looked up at the stars again, searching for something, answers, solace, maybe just the thread of my old life. Eventually, I went inside, found the tea she'd left unfinished. I lifted the mug, tasted the bitterness, realized she'd forgotten the sugar. A fitting metaphor. I took another sip, letting it scald my throat, punishing myself with that heat. The following morning, I woke up in the bed I used to share with her. I hadn't bothered tidying it. The sheets were tangled, still marked by the ghost of our last night together. The pillow smelled faintly like her shampoo. I forced myself not to bury my face in it. I spent the day at home, sorting through old paperwork, ignoring the phone. I had no appetite, barely touched the fridge. By evening, I realized I needed to do something, anything. So I changed into comfortable clothes and set out for a run, the same route I used to take when life was simpler. My legs quickly found the familiar rhythm, pounding the pavement, breath rushing in and out. I ran past the park, the dog walkers, the kids playing, the couple strolling hand in hand. One couple caught my eye, a man and a woman laughing together, the woman leaning her head on his shoulder. My chest constricted with jealousy. Once, that was us. Now, it felt like a lifetime ago. As night fell, I made it back home, sweat drenching my shirt. The porch light cast a warm circle on the steps, beckoning me inside. I noticed mail stuffed in the box. Bills, flyers, one letter from a law office. Right, divorce forms, possibly. I set the unopened letter on the counter, exhausted, uncertain if I was ready to see its contents. I passed the living room mirror and caught a glimpse of myself, hair tousled, t-shirt clinging to my torso, a haunted look in my eyes. I recalled how Daniel had that easy confidence, how Alice once said she wished we traveled more, lived more spontaneously. Was that what she found in him? Spontaneity, excitement, the sense of living on the edge. I stared at my reflection, letting the anger simmer. But instead of fueling me, it drained me further. I realized I was edging toward a breakdown. Grabbing a towel, I headed to the shower, letting the hot water pound my stiff muscles, my mind drifting to the day everything shattered. I remembered opening the safe, feeling the weight of the Glock in my hand. The ghost of that cold metal pressed into my palm now, a memory of a choice I didn't make. A choice that would have ruined everything. I stepped out, dried off, and dressed in fresh clothes. In a haze, I made a cup of tea, ignoring the sugar. The bitterness grounded me, reminded me I was still alive. Then I sank into the couch, flipping through channels on mute, scanning random images that meant nothing to me. A sudden ring of the doorbell startled me. I checked the clock, nearly 10 at night. My mind immediately jumped to her, or him, or both. I swung the door open, ready to confront whoever was there. But it was just my brother, Steve, wearing a concerned expression, a bottle of whiskey in his hand. "Hey," he said softly, stepping into the dimly lit foyer. "I heard. Mom told me something was going on." I forced a grin. "Something? Sure, you could say that." He glanced around, noting the emptiness. "Where's Alice?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Gone. For now. Don't know where." He set the whiskey on the coffee table. "I brought this in case you needed some company. You, want to talk about it?" For a minute, I couldn't find words. Then I just sank onto the couch, propping my elbows on my knees. "She cheated on me, Steve." He sighed, sinking down beside me, his hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was that bad." I nodded, biting back the wave of emotions. It's humiliating. I can't think straight anymore. I can't eat, can't sleep." He squeezed my shoulder gently, then reached for the whiskey. We didn't bother with glasses. He twisted off the cap, handed me the bottle. I took a long swig, letting the burn sear my throat. Sometimes men in my family speak more with silence than with words. Eventually, after several pulls from the bottle, Steve asked softly, "What are you gonna do?" I stared at the blank TV screen. "I don't know. Part of me wants to divorce her, be done. Part of me wants to see her crawl through glass to earn my forgiveness. And part of me," I exhaled, swallowing back tears. "Part of me still loves her, which makes me feel like an idiot." He sighed. "That doesn't make you an idiot. It makes you human." I closed my eyes, recalling her face when she asked if it was truly over. "I can't just forget. But maybe I can find a way to live with it. Or maybe I can't." We drank in silence for a while. Then he stood to go, telling me he'd be available if I needed him. I thanked him, closed the door, and wandered around the house, whiskey warming my blood. I ended up in the bedroom, leaning against the dresser where her phone had lain that night. My head spun with a dangerous mix of longing, anger, and memories. I opened the drawer with the safe, my heart hammering. The Glock was still there, untouched. I stared at it, thinking how many men in my situation might have done something reckless. But I just shut the drawer again, feeling a surge of disgust at myself for even looking. She wasn't worth going to prison. Neither was he. Over the next days and weeks, life took on a strange routine. I went to work, came home to an empty house, drank tea in the evenings like some old widower. My father called once, asked if I was all right. I lied, said I was working through some things. Alice texted me sporadically, mostly to check if I was okay. Once, she asked if she could come by to grab more clothes. I told her to do it while I was at work. She sent me a string of teary emojis and a "thank you." I felt an odd pang in my chest. Meanwhile, Daniel called me once more. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail that I deleted without listening. My appetite for confrontation had vanished. I just wanted them both out of my life, out of my head. But a part of me was stuck in a loop, reliving the betrayal. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him standing there in my bedroom, the camera phone capturing everything, my wife giving herself to him without shame. It got to the point I couldn't sleep without nightmares. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, my heart hammering. One evening, after a particularly bad day at the bank, I found myself nursing a cup of tea on the porch, staring at the sun's last glow across the yard. The late summer sky was streaked with oranges and reds, a vibrant contrast to the emptiness I felt. I thought about how everything in my life had been neat, stable, calm, like a comfortable old shirt. Then, in one savage tear, it all split apart. I remembered my father's old advice: sometimes you have to let something burn down to build anew. Maybe that's what I needed to do: burn it down, watch the embers glow, and walk away. With that in mind, I grabbed my phone and typed a single text to Alice: "We need to finalize this." She responded quickly, as if waiting by her phone. "Yes. Tomorrow." "Tomorrow," I agreed. "Come by in the afternoon." When she arrived the next day, she looked pale and thin, her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. She set her purse on the kitchen counter. We stood there in awkward silence. She broke it first. "I brought the forms," she said, voice trembling. If that's really what you want." I studied her for a long moment, noticing the dark smudges under her eyes. She seemed older somehow, as if guilt had carved lines into her face. I took the forms, laid them on the table. "I'm not sure what I want," I admitted. "But let's get them ready, just in case." She nodded miserably, and we went through them, filling in what we needed. My hand shook slightly when I reached the section about assets, about the house. She offered to sign away her share, which shocked me. "It was your money," she said softly. "I know it. I have no right to it now." I realized she was giving up a lot, but I couldn't find the energy to thank her. We worked in silence for nearly an hour, the clock ticking overhead, the sounds of traffic drifting in from the street. Finally, we had the documents ready. I laid the pen down, exhaling. She stared at my face. "Is this it, then?" I looked at the forms, felt a jolt of finality. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I still feel like there's a war inside me. Part of me wants to punish you forever. Another part misses you." She bit her lip, tears shining in her eyes. "Ed, if there's even a shred of us left." My phone vibrated on the counter, startling both of us. I glanced at it, read the text: "I'm outside. Let me in." It was from a number I recognized but didn't store. Him. I stiffened. She saw my expression change. "What is it?" "Your boyfriend," I said bitterly. She looked genuinely alarmed. "Daniel? I haven't talked to him for weeks, I swear." I strode to the door, flung it open. Sure enough, he was standing there on the porch, hands in his pockets, glancing around nervously. His gaze landed on me, and I saw him tense. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me, making it clear he wasn't welcome inside. "What the hell are you doing here?" I demanded. He raised his hands in a pacifying gesture. "Look, I know this is crazy, but I needed to see both of you. I want to fix this." A surge of wrath flared in me. "Fix it? You can't fix it. Get the hell off my property." He hesitated, eyes flicking to the door. "I need to talk to her, too." I took a step forward, my body taut with adrenaline. "She doesn't want to see you. Understand?" He swallowed. "Look, man, I'm sorry, but this is partly my fault. I can't keep running from it." Before I could stop him, he raised his voice. "Alice," he called, leaning sideways to peer through the window. She must have heard him. The door opened behind me, and she appeared on the threshold, looking stunned. "Daniel," she whispered, her eyes flashing with confusion. He shifted his weight, glancing from me to her. I wanted to say sorry. Again. "Anne," he paused, then held out an envelope. "These are the files from the modeling shoot we did. I'm not going to publish any. I wanted to give them to you, so you'd know I'm not profiting off them." She stared at the envelope, made no move to take it. I folded my arms, trying to keep from trembling with rage. "Hand them over, then leave," I growled. He extended it toward me. I snatched it. "Now go." He raised his gaze to mine, a fleeting look of regret. "I'm sorry, Ed," he said quietly. Then he turned, walked down the steps, and got into his car. Alice and I watched him drive off, both of us breathing heavily, as if we'd run a race. I realized my fists were clenched so tight my nails cut into my palms. She stepped back inside, looking shaken. I followed, slamming the door, tossing the envelope onto the coffee table like a piece of trash. She shivered, wrapped her arms around herself. "I didn't ask him to come here," she said. "I know," I replied, trying to steady my breath. Her eyes slid to the divorce forms on the table. "Does this change anything?" I stared at the pages. My chest felt like it was in a vice. "No. He's just reminding me what you did." She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. Then, barely above a whisper, "So this is how it ends." I closed my eyes. I felt 1,000 knives swirling inside me, each one coated with the memory of that video, that humiliating post. Slowly, deliberately, I reached for the forms. My heart hammered as I flipped to the final page. But my pen wouldn't move. My hand shook. I looked at her, tears brimming in my eyes, and said, "I can't decide right now. I want to end this pain, but I'm not sure if I want to end us." She pressed her lips together, nodding quickly, tears spilling over. I understand." I set the forms aside again. She moved closer, her breath shallow, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't pull away. She touched my arm gently. "I'm sorry," she repeated. "I know that doesn't fix anything." I swallowed. My throat felt parched. "No, it doesn't." Her fingers lingered on my sleeve. "What do you want me to do?" I realized I had no answer for that question. The only thing I knew was that I needed to step out of this suffocating tension. Without a word, I walked toward the door that led to the backyard, feeling the swirl of confusion building inside me. I heard her footsteps behind me, hesitant. Outside, the sky was turning pink with the first brush of sunset. I stopped on the grass, inhaled the humid summer air, trying to calm the chaos in my head. She stood beside me, arms folded. We looked like strangers in a place we once called our own little paradise. Then, quietly, I said, "I'm going to find my peace, with or without you." She sniffed. "Does that mean you want me gone?" I shook my head, honest in my response. "I don't know. Maybe I just need time." She nodded, tears slipping quietly down her cheeks. We stood there in silence until the light dimmed and the fireflies started drifting through the yard. Despite everything, the world kept turning. Eventually, I went inside, grabbed my bag, and left without another word. She didn't try to stop me this time. At the motel, I tossed and turned, my mind roiling with half-formed plans of revenge and half-formed dreams of reconciliation. I thought about how I'd told her I forgave her, how I'd told Daniel the same. Those words were lies, a shallow mask for the deep anger I couldn't shake. In the early hours of the morning, a strange calm settled over me. I realized that in a way, my revenge was already happening. By refusing to scream, by refusing to break down, I was letting them both drown in their own guilt, letting them guess when, or if, I'd finally strike back. That cold satisfaction flickered inside me, but it came with a price. it was turning me into someone I barely recognized. I stared at my reflection in the motel bathroom mirror, noticing the shadows under my eyes, the tightness around my mouth. This was the cost of my revenge, becoming a man who found a bitter kind of joy in watching his wife squirm. In a daze, I packed up my things and checked out, driving around until the morning sun rose high. I ended up in front of my house again. She wasn't there, her car was gone. I entered, noticing how the place felt emptier than ever. In the bedroom, I saw that she'd taken more of her clothes, but had left a single photograph on the nightstand, our wedding picture. We looked so happy, so confident in each other's arms. My throat tightened at the sight of that younger version of us, unaware of the future heartbreak. I took the photo, carried it to the living room, and set it on the mantel. Then I made myself a cup of tea, no sugar, letting the bitterness wash across my tongue. I stepped out onto the veranda, the boards creaking under my feet. The sun cut across the yard in bright, mocking stripes. I lowered myself onto the old wooden chair, sipped my tea, and let the world pass me by for a moment. My phone vibrated. Another text from her, "I'll be out of town for a while. Thinking of you." I stared at the screen, a rush of conflicting emotions twisting in my chest. But I didn't reply. I set the phone aside, gazed at the neatly trimmed grass, the way the light fell through the oak branches, and forced myself to breathe. Maybe she was waiting for me to burn her life down, to call her, to beg her to come back, or to hurl curses at her. Maybe she wanted that final proof that she could still reach me, still make me care enough to lash out. But I was done giving her that satisfaction. I sipped my tea, letting the silence fill the spaces in my heart. She could wait forever for the call that wouldn't come. She could stew in her guilt, hoping I'd break, hoping I'd prove I still needed her. But I'd reached that point of no return, that place of quiet, relentless acceptance. Eventually, the sun shifted, painting the yard with new angles of light. The day wore on. I finished my tea, every last bitter drop, and finally understood something: the taste wasn't nearly as harsh as I remembered. I thought of Daniel, of the apology that had rolled off his tongue so easily, of how he tried to salvage his own conscience by facing me. I thought of Alice, haunted by her own tears and regrets, living with the knowledge that she'd opened Pandora's box. And I realized they were both on the outside now, reaching for me, but unable to touch me. Because I'd become the man who doesn't respond, who doesn't yield, who doesn't let them see the raw agony inside. I leaned back in my chair, set the empty cup on the small table, and watched the sunlight fade into the trees. A curious calm settled over me, and I breathed in the evening air. For the first time since that cursed video surfaced, I felt a strange kind of liberation. Not happiness, not triumph, but the steady awareness that I could stand on my own 2 feet, with or without her, with or without revenge. And if she was still waiting for me to call, waiting for me to drag her back, or scorch her world in rage, she'd be waiting a long time. Because now I was beyond her reach, and that fact alone was the most powerful retribution I could ever deliver.